Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with Bluebear Flutes, bluebearflutes.com, where you'll find some of the greatest and latest Native American flutes made by Native Americans here in Native America. I wanted to share a few things with you today. Don't forget also to check out our Instagram. It's also Bluebear Flutes. I always like to mention Instagram. We don't make any money off of it. The only thing that really happens there is you get to enjoy what you see. I think my wife's taken some wonderful pictures of beautiful flutes that we've made and some different totems and places we've been, things we've done, and all that kind of stuff. Today's video is just a quick little video about something that may be on some of your minds. I've actually received a YouTube comment earlier today that inspired making of this video. And I'm not saying go out and make a lot of comments and then expect them to inspire videos. Chances are you say that, how do you do this? I'm going to send you an email or a link back and say, I've got a video on that already. But this question that somebody posted today was a really good question, or presumption, I guess I would say, with my particular candor. But it was basically about involving, I guess I should say, the use of beeswax by Native Americans. On my YouTube comment, the person said that since Native Americans didn't have bees or beeswax, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm just basically coming down to the end of it, what did natives use for like coating their flute or what have you? Well, I've got other videos about that, but the thing that I really wanted to dive into a little bit was the use of bees and honey by Native Americans. This is a question that I have experienced in different facets in life, not just in flute making. I've had numerous people ask me a similar question in some way, shape, or form. And like I said, this person didn't really pose this as a question, but it kind of, it really should have been, I guess I should say. That way I could have answered instead of trying to correct somebody. But anyway, Native Americans basically use bees and wax and honey for numerous things. I've actually got, the reason I've got my cell phone here in front of me is I've got a few really good references that I'd like to point out just to help, because as my wife and I discuss, today is the day and age when people like to question everything instead of take you at your word. So I like to point out some of the information. I will tell you that the references I have here are typically from South and Central American Indian histories and experiences that settlers, conquistadors, religious people and everybody has come into the Americas have made account of. And these are just a few. Like I say, it's not really a long-winded video today. I just wanted to share something with you because, once again, a lot of people have this question. Even when I was taking a beekeeping class here in my town that I live in, because we always like to learn more, and eventually we started keeping bees, and we have hives regularly these days. I had brought up a question about the native bees to my I guess class leaders there, and just wanted to kind of really touch base on that and see what they thought. And they knew that native bees existed, but they weren't really familiar with them to very much of a degree, which is the case, I think, for most everybody, and for a good reason, which we'll get to here. But basically, native bees of the Americas are, from what I understand, all species that were here in the Americas, and some that still are here, are stingless. That means they don't have a stinger, which is kind of a cool thing. There's historical accounts of native honey being sweeter than European bee honey, and the ways that native people kept bees was a little more unique than the ways that European bees were kept, simply because of the type of bees, so that's something to consider. Now, today, some of you may know and some of you may not, and a lot of you probably think I'm living in Arizona somewhere or Patagonia, South America or whatever. I don't know where you think I am. I'm actually in South Alabama today. That's where we live now and have for some time. My family and I have traveled all over the place. So I've seen, especially being a horticulturalist, among other things, I've seen plant life and animal life all over the place. I've seen a lot of things I could share, but I would like to tell you, in my local area here in South Alabama, we do have what's called a blueberry bee. And blueberry bees are really worth looking into. They're a really cool little guy, and they're the whole reason that any of you get blueberries, so you might want to check that out. They're kind of important. Blueberry bees are indigenous, and I don't think native people maybe raise those, but like the Aborigines of Australia, the blueberry bees actually resemble their bees quite a bit, which are very tiny, and they raise those for honey. So I wouldn't put it past anybody. There's so much history that's lost, and that's the reason I'm sharing this today. But to start off, I'm going to read you a little bit of an excerpt really quick here from the Britannica online. There's a section here, and the links to these 3 articles that I'm going to share are going to be in the description below to help out a little bit in case you want to look a little further and see a few things. But anyway, this article is in the Britannica, American Indian Peoples Pre-Columbian. In pre-Columbian America, gold, silver, and copper were the principal metals that were worked. Tin, lead, and platinum were used less frequently, which means that they were used. You might want to keep that in mind. When Spaniards arrived in the New World in the 16th century, they found a wide range of well-developed technical skills in fine metalwork in Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, and Andean regions. They had very little, they meaning the Spaniards, had very little to offer the Indian smiths who already had mastered techniques of cold hammering and annealing. These are things that are over any flute player's heads for the most part. I actually have been a metal worker. I come from a family of metal workers over history. My dad's side of the family were like miners and metal people from Tennessee, and they did a lot of iron work and what have you. And that same side of the family is my Cherokee side of the family, and where I get most of my woodworking skills. So they had a lot of good things going on there. But I know when my dad told me about raiding a beehive when I was a kid, I thought it was so interesting how he would take like either a piece of string and tie it to a bee's leg, which seems kind of silly, but it works, or he would take some like flour or something and throw it on bees to use as a way to follow them back to their hive. To be honest with you, my dad was probably skilled enough that he didn't need these techniques, but I asked him, how would you find bees? And those were the answers he gave me. I don't know if he got them from a textbook or from his own family's experiences, but my dad used to raid and steal bee honey from bee trees, we called it, or rob bee trees, which means it was bees that lived in the wild. These were probably domestic bees that escaped and lived out in the woods where we lived and where I grew up. But anyway, this Britannica goes on to talk about the lost wax method of casting gold, which is something I've known about for some time. Had friends from Colombia that have showed me these beautiful castings, little figurines that were made with a technique that we have used to make clay whistles. So actually, any of you wearing eyeglasses, if you have a plastic cup in front of you, this is a plastic table. All that is thanks to what's called today lost wax casting. But the Mixtec goldsmiths in Mexico had never been surpassed in delicacy, realism, and precision. And some solid cast frogs from Panama are so tiny and fine that they must be viewed through a magnifying glass to be appreciated. So the level of detail people used to do with gold and wax was just astounding. And that's the point of this article here in the Britannica Online. It talks about some of the Xipe Totec people in Mexico and parts of Colombia, people in Peru, all these people using this gold relief, gold wax relief casting system. And here is a picture, which we'll put up on the screen for you, of a gold mask of Xipe Totec that was cast in gold by lost wax method, made 900 to 14, somewhere between 900 and 1494. It's in the Regional Museum of Oaxaca in Mexico, which I've been to. So lots of really neat stuff on that article. I recommend it highly, any of you that are more interested in finding out about wax relief casting. There's another name you might find it under. The French name Cire Perdue is like lost wax casting. It's what that system basically is. Here's a book called Cire Perdue Copper Casting in Pre-Columbian Mexico, an Experimental Approach. This book is on the jstore.org, which you can find more information about if you follow the link in the description below. And I recommend this, especially any of you that got a little extra time on your hands right now. I would certainly read up on some of this stuff. Very interesting. A lot of it I've been familiar with for a long time. And like I say, in this day and age, people ask you to prove yourself. Here's just a couple of pieces of information. So basically, swiping over to the book that this is in reference of, a little excerpt here. In 1555, Fray Bernardino de Sahagún completed the first version of the General History of Things of New Spain. It was a Nahuatl book, written in Nahuatl, I presume, by his Indian students from Tlatelolco, which is in Mexico. But the 16th chapter of Book 9, called The Merchants, he describes and illustrates Aboriginal gold casting. Once again, reading this excerpt to you. The craftsmen fashioned and designed objects by the use of charcoal and clay molds and beeswax models, to cast gold and silver. This is a really great written account from 1555, which is like not too long after Europeans made it to Mexico. So there's some really good information in there. I would really recommend really reading that. But like I say, this is from 1555, and gives you a detail written by the Nahuatl-speaking people. And here, finally, my last example, which I think is probably my favorite because there's a really cool little picture here, which you'll get to see on the screen. Ancient Maya beekeeping, the stingless bee in pre-Columbian America. So here's an American stingless bee in Belize in a wildlife sanctuary. This is the picture you're going to see. Picture taken by, I think, Bernard Dupont. Anyway, this article was written in 2018. Beekeeping provided a safe residence for bees in order to exploit them. It's an ancient technology in both old and new worlds. The oldest known old world beehives are in Tel Rohev, in what is today Israel, about 900 BCE. The oldest known in the Americas is from the late pre-classic or proto-classic Maya site of Nacum in the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, and that's between 300 BCE and 200 or so CE. So there's some real good time frames for you if you want to know how long beekeeping and honey and this kind of thing has been going on in the Americas. And of course, too, I would like to mention, as I had said before, Native Americans encompass a large cultural idea and manifestation. There's some point, I presume, where Native Americans, I guess in Alaska and north and to the east-ish of Alaska and what have you, are considered to be Mongolians or Tuvians or some other group of people, or Nenet people, whoever. There's countless peoples up there. A lot of them have similar customs to Native American people. Some of them look different than Native American people. Some of them look the same. Some of our languages are similar in so many different ways. I think one of my favorite examples is there's a word in one of my favorite Mongolian songs by the band The Who, not like The Who from back in the 70s or 80s, the HU band. They use a word in one of their songs that I recognized immediately that was Cherokee for the word horse, and I'm like, is there some similarity? But then I asked and looked up what the word was too, and it's not horse in Mongolian. But anyway, like I said, there's so many similarities of different customs and peoples and cultures. I can't really honestly tell you where Native American ends and something else begins. Another good example is, not to get off on many tangents, but I know my good followers who've been with me for a while, I think, oh, there he goes. The Japanese original languages were very close to the Cree language. There's a scholar that had spoke from Japan at MIT some years back about that, and I recognize it, and my Ojibwe and Cree isn't really that good, but I can recognize the Indian words in their language. And it's mostly in the old language. But like I say, where does that end and where does it begin? Central and South America, yes, are definitely Native Americans. Today, yesterday, and forever ago. Whatever percentage you think that people in Mexico may have of Native American history in them, you probably don't know unless you've lived there, and I have. So I'll tell you, Native Americans in Central and South America are Native Americans. And if they had something in that part of the world, where my grandma was from in Panama, if they had something there, chances are we had it up here too. A good example is the death whistle that was kind of a popular Mexican culture type item that we've talked about and I've sold in the past. Those are things that people have discovered that I guess are still in museums today in New Orleans. So anyway, a lot of this stuff we shared, so why not share wax and what have you. There's a lot of gold that people have discovered that was originally from Peru that was in all the way up into Alaska. I actually have had a piece of jade before that was from Alaska that somebody traded for that I found on my property when I was a kid. So there's a lot of things like that. A lot of trade happening in pre-Columbia Americas, and we used everything from resins and animal fats to this beeswax, and the beeswax actually was so much preferred. And just to let you know, the bees that the Mayans used to keep, the I guess Latin name is Melipona bichii, is called the Shunan Cob, which is like their word for it, or Kolel Cob, which stands for the Royal Lady in one of the Mayan languages. But I'll tell you, this kind of thing is such lost information that people believe today that natives didn't use honey and beeswax, but it says right here in this story that I've got, once again, this is Ancient Maya Beekeeping, Stainless Bees in Pre-Columbian America, from thoughtco.com is a website. Once again, a link in the description. But natives raised so many bees, actually in beehives that they kept, that we were made to pay Spain in wax and honey at one point in 1549. Over 150 Maya villages paid 3 metric tons of honey and 281 metric tons of wax to Spain. So, it's not, we weren't raising their bees at that point. And I think any native person that's in the right mind would probably think raising something that stings you is crazy. I know I've thought that for a long time, but I still enjoy, my wife's nodding her head back there. I still enjoy keeping our bees that we have here, our European bees that we're raising like crazy people. But they do sting quite a bit. So, and I know people are going to leave me comments about, well, you're doing it wrong. I've got kind of a handle on that part. But anyway, I hope that this has shed some light on this, and maybe, if nothing else, if you feel the need to go and read those articles, which I really recommend highly. It's not, to be honest with you, I read them quicker than I have spent explaining it to you. But if you do that, you might start questioning some of the other native ideas, concepts, medicines maybe, that people, I don't know if any of you know this, but aspirin used to be made from white willow trees. We used to use a willow bark for aspirin back in the old days, and up until I think it was the 1940s or something, Bayer used to use that to still make their salicylic acid that's in aspirin. So there's a lot of stuff like that. I took prepackaged herbal remedy of elderberry this morning, something I bought from my local grocery store, and I take it regularly. There's a lot really that people don't know. Plants that were hybridized here, things I could go on about. But like I said, this might give you a good starting place in questioning what Native Americans may have used beeswax for, how they used it, and get you going there on a new idea. So kind of help you figure out why it is that we use it on our flutes today. It's really a good protectant in so many ways. It's natural. And even though you have to reapply it a little while after time, it becomes kind of a permanent fixture in the wood. The flute making process we use, people call the finish, a natural finish or a Amish type finish. But, it's something that could have been used in the Americas forever ago. except for the fact that we usually use animal fat for that kind of thing instead. So once again, I hope this has found you all well and helped you get some information about something you may have never known about before. Maybe making you ask more questions, I hope. Not to me necessarily, but I mean just in general, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of the world that really needs to be questioned. You don't get answers unless you ask questions. So thanks, YouTuber, who I'm not going to mention their name simply because, like I said, it wasn't really a question that they asked, but thanks for your motivation and pushing me to make this video. I really appreciate that. It's something I've been wanting to share for a while, like I say, and people have asked in the past, but the way this person said it just kind of made me think, we got to talk about that. So once again, Charlie Mato-Toyela signing out for Bluebear Flutes and bluebearflutes.com, our website. Feel free to check it out. It's there, and we do sell flutes. So y'all have a great day. Thanks so much again for watching.